All right, welcome back, everybody. Today we have a full room of people, um, and we have some new people. Woohoo! Welcome, Rosita. So we have Javier from CWI here today again. Rosita from LCSC. We have Gloria, another trio specialist. Darcy from Bellevue. Hi, Christian. 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 Wow. Christian Adamson from Bellevue High School, and we have Daisy joining us. So we do have a few people leaving throughout the episode, but so if you don't see them later on, they've stepped out. Um, but just wanted to say thank you all for joining us. I also want to thank you guys all for being here and supporting this podcast. I'm very appreciative of this just because I've always had or I've always been self-conscious of speaking, either public speaking or being recorded. um, just because English was not my first language, and it's not something I feel as comfortable as I would like to. So just wanted to send a thank you to all of you guys for supporting me on this. Um, so today we have a few topics we want to cover. Um, One of them would be imposter syndrome. I know we don't necessarily talk a lot about this until we um, have students in that position, or we're talking to students after their first year in college. So just want to give our incoming college students a little bit of information about this and how it can affect them. Would one of you guys like to give us your definition of what imposter syndrome is? Looking at Javier.
Oh, I was like, should we let Rosita go since she's our newest member? No, I'm totally fine with that. So, imposter syndrome to me is definitely like not feeling like qualified or not feeling like the space you're taking up is that you deserve it, basically. So where you feel like everybody else in that space owns it and needs to be there and is overqualified to be there, and you're the one who kind of tricked everybody into believing that you should be there. And I've definitely felt like that many many times, definitely in school, or even being involved in like student clubs. When I got my first, position on an executive board for any kind of, club organization, even now on committees, I always have that in the back of my head, like I'm not good enough, but I'm sure everybody else probably feels the same way. And so I need to remind myself that sometimes.
Well, I can add into that. My definition is pretty similar. It's that little voice in the back of your head. And for me, it's kind of like an elementary teacher's voice a little bit. I don't know why, but that's how I personify it. And it's that nagging feeling like, what are you doing here? You can't do that. And it's interesting because I've had it quite a bit throughout my life, but I didn't have a word for it or a title for it. So it's to me, it was just like it was a determining feeling, and it kind of ran some of my choices in high school. I pushed through it a little more in college, and but it's still something that I struggle with today.
I don't have a mic, so I'm going to be talking to Darcy's laptop. Yeah. But so I actually hadn't really heard the term imposter syndrome until we were talking about having this podcast. But I was just looking it up, and I mean, I guess some of the definition is something that I've kind of realized, but I hadn't heard that specific term used. But I feel like a lot of kids have a lot of kids deal with something similar to that, where they have skills or, things that they may not be confident in their abilities, I guess. So, and sometimes it can take, some type of accomplishment to realize that they're capable of doing certain things, and getting that sense of, understanding that they're capable of doing more than even that they realize. So I don't know if that kind of goes into what we're talking about, because I'm not really familiar with the term, but yeah, just having some kind of sense of accomplishment. And I don't know where I'm going with that, but I'm trying to put some input here. But yeah, I'm not too familiar with the term, so I'm kind of learning as we go on here. So
when I was in high school and I was doing my undergrad, I didn't really realize like that term, and that it wasn't just me feeling out of place, feeling like I didn't belong. But now that I'm actually doing my master's program, when I took my first class for a graduate program, like it made me feel like I was this small, like I did not belong there. Like I just couldn't believe it, because I thought that I would get over it already, but it's something that always comes back. It's something that I feel like you can never get rid of, and you just have to keep on telling yourself, like, I do belong here. There's a reason why I'm here. I'm worthy of like this opportunity. And it's just super hard. Like, it, but it's just something that I feel like you have to hear it from somebody else tell you that it's okay for you to be there, which is totally wrong. But that's my 2 cents. Like, feel like, at least for me, I feel like, because I feel like that right now at the age that I'm at and where I am in my life, I came to realize it's important for us to tell the students, like, so many times, like, hey, like, I know exactly how you feel, but you belong where you want to go, and you deserve that opportunity as much as any other person.
Yeah, so I definitely had that same experience. When I got to college, I always did really well in high school. I wasn't like the top couple of students in my class, but I never struggled with math, and I thought, oh, college would be super easy. And I remember my first semester being like, what am I doing here? I'm not as smart as some of these people. Like, I don't belong here. And it's definitely kind of a shock. And I definitely know that there's students that go through this, and a lot of them, that's why they don't return and finish school. But Gloria, you're right. We definitely, that is something that we should talk to students about. That it's not only them. It's a feeling that a lot of students have, no matter where they come from or what their background is like. That first, not even their first year, like you're saying, you going into the master program, that's and you feeling that way, that's something that sticks with some students for sure. Rosita, since you're new here, we're gonna kind of pick on you, but do you mind giving us kind of a background about your college experience?
Okay, yeah, so I'm originally from Weiser, Idaho, Annex, Oregon, right on the border. I graduated from Weiser High School, so I like to claim Weiser still. I went to Lewis Clark State College for my first 2 years. Loved it, yep, definitely Warrior for life. Absolutely loved it, and I was a biology student there and ended up transferring to the University of Idaho for the pre-vet program. Because at that time I was pretty naive and I didn't realize that you could stick with biology and still have a pathway to vet school and everything. But I ended up graduating from the University of Idaho with my bachelor's in science in animal vet science, pre-vet. And then I got a job as a recruiter. And so I've been kind of helping students like find their goals and things like that, and kind of finding LCSE as well. I work right now for Lewis Clark State College, of course, as an enrollment specialist. But it's kind of interesting that we're talking about imposter syndrome, because I definitely feel, I never felt it up until I transferred to the University of Idaho, but it was mostly because of the program that I was in. For the pre-vet program, I noticed that in a lot of my classes, there was a lot of, students that came from an agricultural background, or it was a lot of students that, worked with FFA, that did like 4-H and things like that. There was a lot of, Caucasian students as well. And I've noticed a lot of times I was the only brown student in my classes and things like that. So that's definitely the first time I really started feeling that way, where it was kind of like at a place where I felt like I didn't belong, where I felt like my knowledge wasn't compared to their knowledge and things like that. So I don't know, it's kind of interesting topic that we're talking about today, but that's just a little bit about me.
I think sometimes it's also a cultural thing. I know personally when you're starting your college search, sometimes you look at other people in your school, students that are applying to maybe the same school that you're going to. And you know that their pathway is probably going to look a little bit different than yours. And so you're sometimes discouraged again because you're not familiar with, what's coming ahead, or you don't feel like maybe you have the same chances as other people. So it definitely, I guess, it's kind of where I think it can affect students culturally. I mean, I don't think it's something that you ever get over. I know that I still haven't. And I mean, I advocate for students to continue on. And sometimes it is hard for me to practice what I preach because, I'm almost complete with my master's program. And even at this point where, I'm going to graduate, with honors. And even there's times when I'm just like, I can't believe that, I'm doing this good. Like, I think ahead of time, I'm like, I'm already expecting myself to fail. But again, like just kind of bringing things back to the whole cultural thing. I'm starting the PhD program, and just even applying, I feel discouraged sometimes because I don't know any other Latinas that are pursuing or that have a doctor title. So it's weird to kind of motivate yourself sometimes too when you don't have those examples and you don't know who to look up to or who to talk to about, how did you get through this? Because I think to Gloria's point, you start in undergrad kind of doubting yourself, but then you go to masters and that doubt is still there with you. And then, you would think, yes, at this point, I'm doing so good and, I'm about to graduate. And yet that fear is still there. That feeling is still there. And you go so far and I think it's just something that just doesn't ever go away. If anything, I think sometimes it just kind of amplifies as you get into like maybe a little tougher area of your study, whether that's a program like Rosita mentioned or that next level of education too. So I think it kind of ties both hand in hand, I think sometimes. And I think those are the times that you just kind of have to realize that it's okay to sometimes feel that way, but you also have to push yourself past it, because I think sometimes we are our own worst critics. And so I think that's obviously something that I think a lot of people don't also talk about is your I don't know how like the best way to put this, but your mental health. You also have to take care of that, because as you let this imposter syndrome just continue on, like it just becomes harder and harder for you to see yourself across that finish line. So I think that's also another important topic too, that students have to feel like it's okay to express that you feel this way. As you can see, all of us have shared, yes, there's a point where we all have felt it. So I think it's more common than I think a lot of people really know.
I think that what Daisy just said, and definitely some of the other items we've discussed, kind of just brought a little bit up to something to light for me. And it's also super important for our notable firsts and our like trailblazers, that are kind of pushing the way for a lot of us that don't see ourselves in certain situations or spaces or positions, right? Is that we have to acknowledge and like cheer and like celebrate once you see someone in a space like that you always like doubt yourself being in. And so for example, like when we talk about school, and Yvonne, you touched on it a little bit too, that our upbringing can put some doubt in our heads about like where we need to be or where we belong. Even just, being an English, primarily Spanish speaker, so English as a second language person and navigating education, in the back of your head, you always feel like my English isn't good enough, those English classes and when we write essays, like that wasn't my favorite at all sometimes in high school, but in college it became fun for me. But the point is, like, when you're doubting yourself, or especially when I was, and definitely when I was in college, that was always in the back of my head. You're first generation, you don't know English that well, where people might not even assume that that's something in my head that I worry about, right? But then just also realizing, or like we talked about, a little self-empowerment is realizing, well, no, I speak two languages. So if I'm struggling with one, there's this other one that I'm also learning to navigate. And I'm proud of that, you know what I mean? And most people don't have that. Or also just when you get a position and and you're wondering, did I trick people? Am I good enough? It's like, who did you really trick those 6 people on the committee to give you that space? Like literally everything you've done and how you presented yourself made you clearly the most qualified person. You know what I mean? Or in situations like that. And so just reminding our students that they are good enough, that they're more than capable enough, that they do belong, that's empowering, not only for the students, but even for ourselves. I know whenever my coworkers or friends, get to do cool things or reaching awesome milestones, then I'm there to celebrate and cheer and like support, because they are paving the way for a lot of our students and helping us not have that imposter mindset. Seeing people that look like us, that are like us in these positions we want to attain means everything.
What I guess what would be and have you kind of gave us an example, what would be other ways to make this feeling less, I guess, overcoming um of our experiences in college, or even after, especially going into different professional job fields? What are some suggestions that you give students, or do you think would be helpful for students?
I think I would definitely say, like, just say it out loud. Let somebody know that that's how you're feeling. Like I said, I still feel it, and it's weird because so many people, like, want to celebrate with me my accomplishments, and again, I'm still kind of like thinking to myself, like, why are you congratulating me? I'm not done yet. Or, what if I don't even finish? Like, and again, it's just sharing the way that you feel, and finding those mentors. I think it's okay to reach out to someone and say, hey, this is how I feel, and I don't feel like, what I'm doing or what I'm writing or the way that I'm applying this, or am I doing this the right way? I think it's okay to say it out loud and tell somebody, because that's, again, all of us, I think, we have never had this conversation, but I think just saying it now, it's like, oh yeah, like I can totally see that point, and I can totally see how you felt that, Rosita, in your program, going through, a program where there isn't a lot of students like yourself, or that you felt like you weren't qualified because you didn't have that same agricultural background. I think again, just reaching out to someone, saying it out loud, so that you can find those people that might be able to help you, and that are going to say, you know what, I totally can see where you're coming from. I felt the same way. This is how I'm overcoming it. And finding those people that can kind of help you to that next step, whether that's, helping you apply to go to college, or helping you even edit a paper. I think Javi made a really good point with writing. I know, like, my first semester in grad school, like, I was so scared to even post, like, my personal opinion, um, because I would see these attorneys and, people like that are like business owners, like, you just feel like, I'm not there, I don't have that title. I'm afraid that they're going to judge what I write. Am I writing it the right way? Do I sound just as smart as them? Because also, when you come from a background where you're not, where English is not your first language, like, you do have a lot of self-doubt when it comes to writing. And I know I did personally, because I felt like the way that I write, or that I express myself, and my writing is so different from other people that, use all these big words, that for me, it's just, I feel like it's not necessary if I'm trying to make my point in a different way. And a lot of the times, like I said, when you vocalize that and you let your professors know, or your teachers know, they'll let you know, sometimes it's not about the student who has the biggest words. Sometimes it's also those students that, use those big words because they don't understand the material that they're covering. And if you're able to synthesize that down, that's how you know that you're understanding the material. So again, like, don't doubt yourself in that area when it comes to that, because again, like, it's something that's so common.
It's kind of funny because I still sometimes like overthink my emails just in a professional sense and things like that. Like I'm so hesitant on like what I want to write, especially if it's someone to like with higher authority or higher power and things like that. So that overthinking the whole, I don't know, just what you're writing and if it sounds okay is definitely real as well. But I wanted to kind of add on to like one of my things is just you know, recommending, you know, students like that to students that preparation is definitely going to go a long ways. Just whether it's like studying for a class, whether it's studying for a presentation and things like that, practicing beforehand, preparation is definitely going to be something that will help you guys kind of build a little bit of confidence and make you feel a little bit more like you do belong, like you know the information, like you know what's expected and things like that. So just kind of work with that, talk to people like Daisy said for sure, but also make sure that you guys are prepared so that you're not going in there blind, and so that you do kind of start believing in yourself and trusting that you know that information.
I think it's important, like, at least like I'm starting to think about like what made me feel like, okay, like I still get those moments of feeling like imposter, but like after talking to like a person that I really trust, like Daisy said, like it really does help. But then you also kind of have to like sit yourself down and just tell them like, okay, like tell yourself like I belong here, like I'm here for a reason. Like you don't just choose to go to college just to go, just because you want to, but like because you actually want to do something with your life. Um, and you have to like tell yourself like, okay, we got this. Because if you don't hear it, I feel like you can't always depend on that other person to tell you it, because they're not going to be there forever by your side. And you need to find that person in you and just tell it to yourself. Um, as a first generation student, it's hard and you have to work on it. Like there's no easy way around it. It's always going to be with you. Being a first generation student, like it's going to college, being the first professional in your family too. It's something that you, like Rosita said, like you have to practice, and you can't just show up with being unprepared. That's not, what's the word I'm trying to say? It's not an option for you. Like as sad as it sounds, like you can't just show up and expect everything to be fine without like putting in work. You have to. If you want to succeed in your life, you have to do it.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm being very like
It's like, dang, motivational here. Well,
All right, so transitioning over to some of the majors, what are some first of all, Rosita, I didn't know you did animal vet. That's pretty awesome. But you mentioned something about not knowing that staying with biology was some was an option. Uh, are there any, I guess, programs or majors that you guys weren't aware of before going off to college, that you could have possibly studied, or that you might have been interested in, or maybe that your now school offers to students that are very uncommon?
I think that when one of the big things about just, being a student and thinking about what you want to do the rest of your life, one of the things we don't really talk about just is career exploration. I think the question that we ask a lot of our students is like, what do you want to study? What's your major? Or when the question should be like, what career path would you like to have, and what kind of like field would you like to be working on? That actually helps us, even just help students decide what majors might be best for them based off of that. And so when I started college, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but MySpace, back in the day, allowed you to do HTML coding to make your page look cool. Does everyone remember that? Where you would go find and post the HTML code to make your page look a certain way. So that in itself was cool because that actually got a lot of people to play around with that. You did have to learn a little bit of coding to be able to make your page look cool. And so in my head, I was like, oh, I would like to do something like that. when I got to college. So I thought computer science was the degree I needed to do that. And as it turns out, it wasn't. And also, I after taking a class, I just realized that that wasn't really what I wanted to do, right? Until I had to take one of the core classes for psychology, and I liked it. I liked everything I was learning in that class. It was fun. I got a good grade on it. To me, those were all indicators of this is probably something I should pursue because it really interests me, and it helped me change my degree to that. But yeah, I mean, and then just being in college and friends telling me their majors, architecture, right? I knew that you needed architects, but all that stuff doesn't really play in your mind about what it is you need to study to get to that point when you're young. And so, like, even law school, I didn't know U of I had a law school, and I was there, and I didn't find out till a few years after I was there. And you know what I mean, and things like that. So, getting to college, that was an eye-awakening experience for me, and that I got to learn about the different types of degrees, but also more about like what I wanted to do myself. And because a lot of us have these goals and dreams and aspire to, you know, become professionals in fields that our parents would never got to, or we could only imagine ever getting to. Um, our path to get there can sometimes be longer than anyone else who has family members there. And so I think it's important to research, but I think it's important to think about what kind of career path do I want and what kind of field do I want to be in, and maybe reaching out to folks and asking them, how do I get there? What kind of degree did you have to help you get to that path a little bit quicker? And it's not really about how long it takes to get there, but definitely the journey. And if it can be easier for you, researching that information would be very helpful. My 2 cents. Popcorn to Gloria.
Dude, that popcorn is taking me back to elementary school.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't want any. I was like, I don't want any awkward pause after I talk.
And you know, I hated that. That was like traumatizing. I was like, don't talk to me, don't talk to me, don't talk to me.
Really? I was like, no one's
yeah.
picking me. No one's picking me.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, like I guess I think about it and I feel like the major that I selected, it was kind of because of like what my parents would say, like, oh, you should do this. Like at one point I remember like I wanted to be like a photographer because I really like to take pictures. And I remember specifically like telling my dad, and my dad's like, I am not gonna pay for your school for you just to learn how to take pictures. In that case, just like start working somewhere. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll pick business because business, like, I was like, I guess it'll get me somewhere. Um, but I never knew about like social work. Like I knew, like I remember, like when I was a senior, it was very popular to either be studying business or be studying nursing. Everybody wants to be a nurse, but I remember like still being like, well, maybe I can be a nurse, and then I realized you have to do that human anatomy, and then you have to dissect a cat. I was like, I'm out. I'm like, I can't do that. Yeah, I think it's like really hard. Like I guess like I think it as a now as an adult, it's better like I think if you talk to your students about like the career instead of like the major, because I'm a business major and I'm doing education. And I feel like that's something that my parents don't understand. Nobody in my family does. Like, how could you be studying business and you're practically like a teacher? I'm like, I'm not a teacher. Like, that's not what I am. But I feel like I would have enjoyed to do more like social work type of programs. But by the time I realized like, and I found social work, it was already too late. Like my Pell Grants were running out and I needed to graduate. So, and I had most of my business classes. So that's why I ended up with a business degree.
I wouldn't say necessarily that there was another major that I wanted to do. I think I had a really good sense of wanting to do business. But I think the one thing that I would have liked to have known is that you can do like multiple degrees that are similar. Where, you know, I didn't know that like my marketing degree was so close to like public relations or human resource, and that I could have double majored and done like a minor and done it so much quicker than trying to do like a foreign language, you know. So I think those are the kind of things that I wish I would have known a little bit better. But I think as far as like majors um, that U of I offers that I think people don't know about. I don't think that there are certain majors that they don't know about. I think more it's the way that the universities and colleges call their majors. I think that's what makes it tricky for students is that, where they could keep it something simple like pre-med or food science or something or nutrition, they come up with these really complicated names that don't really like speak to what exactly they entail. And so I think that's where I think a lot of students get confused. But also maybe if there was more of like, I mean, and this is like wishful thinking, obviously it's something, it's easier said than done, but for universities and colleges to agree on terminology. But I know that sometimes it's a program that's unique to their school, and so that's why they choose to go with a more unique name, I guess, if you may. But I think personally, just from working in admissions, I think a lot of the times you learn new things, but I think it's also the confusion of like catalog years and schools getting rid of a degree or adding to a degree. And so, um, yeah, I think there definitely has to be some sort of introductory course that should be offered to all freshmen where they get to learn. Like we have this tool at U of I that we call Degree Finder, where they can learn the different career paths, to Javier's point. And I think that's something that, even high school should be focusing more on, is helping them identify a career rather than a major. Because I think knowing what you like to do is more important than going for a specific title. Because I think there's so many people that major in something and then go into the workforce doing something completely different from what they studied. And so I think it would really prepare them a lot more if they actually looked for something that they were interested in rather than picking a major or a college, I guess.
That's such a great point. I know when we're working with students, especially like on Apply Idaho, where the application has to select the schools and then what major, and you type in nursing, and all of a sudden, like some schools that offer nursing don't have it. They call it pre-med or biology with a emphasis on I don't know, human anatomy or something. Um, it's definitely so confusing for students. So thank you for bringing that up, Casey. Rosita, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I definitely just kind of hearing you guys speak and everything, it just reminds me just to, I don't know, to tell students that like there's not just one track that's going to get you to where you want to go. So definitely researching your careers is going to be the biggest thing, but just knowing that there's going to be multiple pathways for you to reach that goal. I know with the pre-vet, like how I didn't know biology could have led me there. Same thing if you're wanting to go into some of those pre-professional programs, you can have any sort of major, but as long as you guys are working with your advisor and meeting those prerequisites needed for that next step, you guys can literally study anything you want. You can, I don't know. I mean, kind of, putting some limits on there for sure as well. But like I could have studied history. I could have studied, I don't know, political science. And as long as I took some of those science classes needed for vet school, I could have still been on the same pathway and things like that. So just kind of making sure that you're aware that, you don't have to stick to one specific program to get to where you want to go. And then just knowing that, prepare yourself, start getting to know who you are when you're in high school, when you're in, that first year of college and things like that as well. Because I didn't know I liked wildlife resources, and I didn't know that was a degree and things like that. And I took some classes at U of I and I loved it. So it's just, getting out there and like trying new things, like job shadowing people, even if it's not a requirement for your senior project and things like that. Like go out into the community and start doing some of those things. If you have a job, start talking to like some of the upper management, figure out like how they got to where they're at, if that's what you want to do. Use your free time, use your weekends, go volunteer at different places and things like that. But just be aware, build up your I don't know if it's called like cultural capital and things like that or something, but like build up your own personal experiences, and just know that wherever you're trying to go, you're going to have help. Just make sure that you're asking for it as well.
The other thing that I wanted to mention is a lot of students are afraid of picking a major because for some reason they feel like they have to stick with it. And that is not the case. So what are some of the downsides to changing your major?
So Gloria touched on it a little bit ago, but one of the things is if you take too long to graduate, to meeting graduation requirements for your major, you can run out of Pell Grant money. So they have a 600% limit, which is basically 6 years worth of Pell if you're eligible. And so if you're pushing that or you're showing you're not making progress towards a degree, you can lose your aid. The other thing too is if you have completed a certain amount of years under your belt of classes and then you decide to change to a major that's not closely tied to what you've already completed, then you would prolong graduation that much more, depending on what additional classes there may be. Daisy's point earlier was that had she known about other majors close to what she was studying, she could have double majored. And it might have taken a semester longer, but she could have double majored in more degrees in that business field.
Perfect. So I think, and I guess this is what I tell my students, like it's the reason why we push so hard for you to kind of have a major in mind or a career path in mind so that we can help you figure out what classes to take your first year, figure out your classes in college. And then if that changes, talk to an advisor at your college. But it's nice to have some sort of plan. And like Rosita said, be prepared, do some research as to what career path you want to take and what that would entail. So I think we can talk a little bit more about that on another episode. I think we'll finish off here. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining us again, and Rosita for joining us this time. Hopefully we get to have you join us on another episode. But is there anything else, any last remarks from anyone?
Yes, do your FAFSA.
Yes. If you haven't done your FAFSA, get it done. Get it taken care of. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.